This changes everything for the Toronto Maple Leafs as a brand new report has dropped revealing some surprising details surrounding Mitch Marner and his future in Toronto. We're going to break down these reports and discuss what this means going forward as the recent increase to the cap has serious implications on the Leafs, not only this year, but going into the future as well. And it directly impacts some of their players who are pending free agents. So stay tuned for all that in this episode, folks. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage you aren't subscribed to the channel, about 71% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 16,000 subscribers. We're getting closer and closer. So thank you guys for your continued support. But there's a lot to go over today. Now, obviously, the Leafs are in a interesting spot when it comes to not only the season, the trade deadline coming up, but also their future beyond this year. With Tavares and Mitch Marner being pending UFAs, there's a lot of talks going on about what's going to happen after this season surrounding them. But a new report has dropped revealing some interesting details surrounding Mitch Marner. Now, we didn't have a full video on how the cap increase is going to affect the Leafs, so we're going to dive into that a little bit here. But we'll start with this report. With the salary cap set to rise, significantly over the next 3 seasons, the Maple Leafs may have to consider giving Mitch Marner a higher cap hit than Austin Matthews if they decide to extend his contract, as they will be one of the few teams able to spend the limit. The Maple Leafs will have more financial flexibility than they did in the flat cap era, and that projected cap adds an interesting wrinkle to his contract. Darren Ferris could push for a larger hit than 13.25. So Darius, this has fans a little bit interested. I mean, I'm sure Austin Matthews, I'm wondering how much he'd actually care if Mitch Marner gets a bigger contract. At this point, the contracts are going higher. The salary cap is going up. It was inevitable, and it is inevitable that some player will surpass his contract at some point.
Well, first of all, these guys do care. They definitely care. They have jersey numbers in their contract, in their salary, right? So these guys care. They know where the commas are, all that good stuff. So I think that they do. And it's very interesting. If Mitch Marner were to hit the free market, the open market, right, in free agency, he would make more than Austin Matthews, I think, because of the news of the salary cap. And we haven't had a video on this yet since the news of the salary cap going up. And we'll have more on that later in the video, the specifics and how much it's going up. But this is a huge deal for superstars who are about to sign this offseason and next, because they're going to make far more than we ever thought they were, because the salary cap is going up significant numbers every single year, almost $10 million next year and the year after that. So it's going up big time. So a lot of agents are going to look at that and those projections and be like, hey, my client has to make way more now because of that. We're going to wait. We want a higher percentage of the cap, and that's exactly what's going to happen with Mitch Marner this summer. So in theory, there was a report earlier this season that the Leafs have a new internal salary cap, which I don't know why didn't exist when Kyle Dubas was here, but they have this new internal salary cap that, Austin Matthews is the highest paid Leaf, and it's going to stay that way. And that's kind of what they told Mitch Marner, and Mitch Marner wants to make more than that, and probably more than Austin Matthews, and he wants to make a certain percent of the cap. It's not about certain, numbers anymore. It's not about 12 or 13 million, any of that. It's about a percentage of the cap. So he's going to want to make a percentage of the cap, a certain percentage. So it's going to get very interesting. He's going to want a lot, because any superstar this summer goes, you want me to sign for 7, 8 years? Then I want this percent of the cap, because I know that the salary cap is going up X amount over the next couple of years. So it's going to get really interesting with these new projections.
Yeah, I had this up a little bit when you were speaking. I'm not going to go into all of it, but we obviously know his current cap hit. You can see the second paragraph. Darren Ferris could also insist on Mitch Marner simply getting a raise from his last deal, regardless of the percentage. Another possibility is a short-term bridge deal, 1 or 2 years, to take advantage of future cap increases, which is something we might see more across the NHL now, though I don't know if he's going to want that. I'm sure Mitch Marner probably wants some more certainty than a short-term bridge deal, but again, this is from Jonas Siegel, and things just start to get extremely interesting. And you're right, the players definitely do care, but I also think from Austin Matthews' perspective, like with the cap going up, there is a very real possibility that he makes more than Mitch Marner, makes more than Austin Matthews if he extends with the Leafs, or if in general, if he hits the open market, just because of the way that the cap hit has increased. And I'm sure when Austin Matthews it comes time to renegotiate his contract with the Leafs, or whenever it becomes UFA, those contracts will go up a lot. And talking about the actual limit here, you can see how much of a financial boost does the NHL see from the return of internal competition. In 2025, 2026, the upper limit is now 95, the lower to 70.6, and then 2026, 104, and 20, you can read the numbers there yourself, 2027, 113. It goes up a lot. And this is one of the biggest, this is going to have a ton of impact, not only on the Leafs, of course, but every single team in the NHL. It helps some teams like the Montreal Canadiens now have a bunch of cap space coming up. They can make some big moves there, make some huge signings with that cap space. And it doesn't necessarily hinder many teams, but it's going to be interesting because the Mitch Marner situation is directly impacted by this, and things get extremely interesting. And Darren Ferris, as we know, is not the easiest agent to deal with in the NHL.
No, right after Austin Matthews signed his initial contract,
Yeah.
not his ELC, but his first long-term contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he came out and said that it was ridiculous and all this stuff. You can go back and read it if you want, but I remember it being a big deal at the time. So yes, not the easiest, but it's not crazy to think that Mitch Marner will, because of these new projections, make more than Austin Matthews, because Austin Matthews signed a shorter term deal for that reason, so he can re-up in a couple of years with the new salary cap, right? The only thing is the salary cap is going up. So yes, these stars are going to take up a higher percentage of the cap, right? That's kind of the reason why. But you can't take up the entire cap. You can't put the Leafs back in the position that they were in 1920, right? Like, you can't do that. The salary cap going up, they want to add more pieces. They want to add to the third line. They want to add on defense, all these things, right? You can't take up all of the salary cap. So that's something they got to keep in mind too. And again, there was a report earlier this season, I think it was right before the season started, where the Leafs have a new internal cap. They don't want anyone to make more than Austin Matthews. So there's a lot at play here. The cap is going up. Superstars are going to look at that and say, I want to make a higher percentage because the cap is going to, during my contract, the duration of it, the cap is going to go up $30 million. So I want to make way more money. But then you also have the Leafs saying, well, no one's making more than this guy. Nobody's making more than 34. So I think it's gonna get very interesting. This just dropped last week. So again, a lot's going to happen between now and the end of the season. I don't think the Leafs are going to do anything in terms of contracts until the end of the playoffs. I think they want to see how Mitch Marner does in the playoffs. Same with John Tavares too. He's had a great year, but let's see how the playoffs go, and then we can talk numbers. And I think, you can sign John Tavares right now, and I think most people would be pretty happy with that. We know he's probably going to return. It's going to be less, right? And probably 6 million, something like that, 6.5. Mitch Marner is the real question mark. Like, how does he perform in the playoffs, and how much are you giving him? So I think that all of this will probably stall until the playoffs are done. Same goes for Matthew Nyes too, but this changes things. The cap's going up a significant amount. I think you can now give Matthew Nyes a pretty significant raise too.
Yeah, and if the Leafs do well in the playoffs, I'm sure they'll be more inclined to bring Mitch Marner back, even if it's just from outside pressure. Quick thing before we wrap up. The Leafs haven't decided that negotiations of players like Marner and Tavares will wait until after the season. There's ongoing dialogue between the Leafs and the agents for these players, but it hasn't progressed to the point of exchanging official offers. It remains a process that's unfolding over time. For Mitch Marner, if the timeline gets close to July 1st, it might make sense for him to explore his options, whereas Tavares is in a different position. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I would like to see a couple of these contracts, specifically the John Tavares one, finalized during the season. I think Mitch Marner, a lot of it depends on how the playoffs go, which is kind of funny because realistically, we shouldn't judge him based off of a couple games, but we really should, because the playoff success for this team has been the biggest point, the biggest indication, the point of pressure for this team. And it's going to be interesting. Mitch Marner's camp, I would think that the Leafs are going to need some direction, maybe definitely on exactly what the camp is looking for, because there was rumblings earlier on in the season about a trade deadline, trading Mitch Marner and all these things. I think that's probably pushed to the side as they're going to contend and make a big move. But either way, changes everything for the Leafs. So let us know down below what your thoughts are on the Mitch Marner report, on the cap going up in general, because things are going to change for the foreseeable future for this team. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.